Um, Misconceptions often abound in your field. What are some common myths about insolvency and business recovery that you've come across, and how do you address them?
Well, I guess there's a few floating around. I suppose one of them, and it's probably not as much as it necessarily was, say, 20, 30 years ago, perhaps when I first entered the industry, but there is still a bit of a stigma associated with insolvency, in that it represents some sort of, I guess, moral failure.
Mm.
It's actually a normal, if unfortunate, part of doing business. Most people don't set out to go broke, and it's probably a very small proportion of directors who basically set out to game the system, if you like. There's also like another thing about a misconception, I suppose. A, a fair chunk of appointments are voluntary, where be it a VA or be it a voluntary liquidation, the directors are they're the ones who initiate the process, and almost I guess you could regard it as by default they end up appointing the appointee. And now it's probably given this kind of idea that there's a perception in some quarters that there's such as friendly liquidators.
Right.
Insolvency appointments are they're a bit of a nebulous area in that pre-appointment the practitioner is really in a position of advising the directors or the board. But once the actual formal appointment's made, it's the appointee's duty is primarily to the creditor. Is primary duty, I suppose, is the best way to describe it, is to the creditors. And so that's probably something that directors have a bit of a challenge. Some directors, at least, have a bit of a challenge getting their head around. It's a bit of a shock to the system. Often, I guess the interests of creditors and directors can align, particularly where you're talking about a deed of company arrangement, which produces the best return for the creditors and restores the company to the control of the directors. But where those interests aren't aligned, it's obviously the creditors' interests who have to take precedence.
Mm. Okay, wow, it's really, really intriguing. So, at Hall Chadwick, you've mentioned enjoying the challenge of achieving the best result for all stakeholders in difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through your approach when collaborating with stakeholders to navigate insolvency situations?
Well, I suppose the first point to make is that no appointment's the same, and there's a reason why it's called insolvency. You're not necessarily going to get a Rolls-Royce service if you've got a VW budget. Having said that, communication and clear and transparent communication is a key driver, and it for all stakeholders, and it's probably a guarantee of it probably gives you the best chance of getting the best result. So if you've got an appointment of any size, you basically, the best approach is I find the best approach is to sit down with the directors on a periodic basis, formulate the restructuring plan, and identify the restructuring plan, identify key milestones, and identify on the journey, if you like, variations to those milestones, because they will come up. And like once you've got that system in play, or that, I guess, broad framework in place, you've got to communicate it to the other stakeholders, being the creditors, the employees, the major suppliers, and the financiers. Because unless there's buy-in from those other parties, you're never going to actually be able to achieve, you're not necessarily going to be able to achieve the result that you're looking for. And it's in everyone's best interest, so to speak.
Right. So under those circumstances, is that the receiver role is to communicate with different stakeholders and can be the liaison person? Is that right?
Well, receiver is a slightly different a receiver has a slightly different role in the sense that that's a secured creditor role, and you're basically acting primarily to recover the secured creditor's debt. That said, you basically the best receivership outcomes are where you work collaboratively with the existing board to maximise the result that you might be able to achieve in paying down the secured debt, such that there'll be a surplus left over or something left, such that the business may be able to be restructured by way of a deed of company arrangement following dealing with the secured debt. And obviously, a VA can include dealing with the secured debt going through the process.
Right. Okay. Wow.
So, like, I guess, regardless of the style of the appointment, communication and bringing people into the tent gives you the best chance of sort of maximising the result for all parties sort of business. Now, it's not necessarily always going to work, because particularly in a receivership scenario, there might be resistance from the directors, and that's just something that the appointee has to work through, and you often need to I guess communicate and discuss with people their concerns so that resistance is minimised or falls away.